Welcome back. It's time for Media Watch on France 24. Media Watch France, actually, our look at the top stories in the French press. James Creedon has the lowdown.
Good evening, Lana.
We start today with the major news here in France. This new bill adopted by the lower house of parliament, which outlaws denial of the Armenian genocide.
That's right. A hugely divisive law, and the social media have been a hubbub, I suppose you could say, with comment on it since early morning. You have MPs who were participating in that vote, or not, as the case may be, uploading photos, tweets, etc. So let's just take a little look on Twitter, and we can see what has been uploaded here. This is a photo outside of the National Assembly, and I think you had these pictures in the bulletin as well, Lana, of the CRS riot police. It was such a divisive issue that they had to bring in the riot police, and that is Lionel Tardy, a UMP party MP who's very active on Twitter and elsewhere, who uploaded that, and he said it's been a 6-hour arm wrestle in the parliament, and it has turned into Fort Knox here.
There were thousands of protesters outside the building.
Right.
Peaceful protesters. But
well, and he was saying that it was an arm wrestle inside in terms of how to vote with that bill. He agrees with François Bayrou, the centrist candidate in the election. You can see here, Bayrou said it was an unreasonable and dangerous text, and Tardy agrees with that. So even MPs on the political right, who voted on this text, not necessarily agreeing with the spirit of it. Eric Vert, who is a former Labour minister, he says it is not up to the Parliament in this tweet, he says, to define historical truth. That's a message we've been hearing a lot in the last few days, people disagreeing with the Parliament's role in issues such as this. I therefore choose to abstain in this vote, he says. So that's his point of view. Patrick Devedjian, a lot of people have been looking very closely at him because he's actually of Armenian origin, and he said that there is no need to bring historians together to figure out whether or not there was a genocide in 1915. So for him, it's just a fact. It is not a question of debate. So that's his point of view. On the Turkish side, a lot of reaction as well online. This is the Turkish Deputy Prime Minister, Bülent Arınç, and he spoke about the laws being a betrayal of history and historic realities, and some front pages as well. The Arrêt sur Image website here in France has captured some of the front pages in Turkey, and the first one here is the Turkey newspaper, and they have taken a French front page from Le Figaro last Wednesday with the headline "Open Crisis Between France and Turkey." This one here, it's front page news in Turkey essentially. This newspaper Akit also talking about it, saying Sarkozy plays with fire, and you can see there, if we zoom in, there's a cartoon of Sarkozy guillotining himself. So I suppose what they're pointing out there, and also holding up his hand in a V for victory sign. So I suppose they're trying to point out the paradox of this issue perhaps being used in advance of an election year, or I suppose they're inferring that, but perhaps at a large cost to maybe international relations.
France losing a valuable ally there, at least for...
Absolutely.
For the time this round
Lots
lasts.
of comments about that elsewhere as well, Lana. There was a French website a French language Turkish website where a lawyer by the name of Gilles Dever said if this law is coming back today, it's as a means of gaining votes for next year's presidential election. And also the whole idea is to sanction people for denying the Armenian genocide, but actually those sanctions have not even been put in place yet. So this law was meant to go further than a 2001 law which recognised the genocide, and actually in terms of what can be done to sanction people, it doesn't have any concrete measures.
So it's not even sure it's going to be useful. It's going to change anything.
So he as a lawyer says, this really, in terms of concrete measures, is absolutely lacking.
So some people have accused Sarkozy of electioneering there, of trying to garner votes from the French Armenian community. Let's talk about Nicolas Sarkozy's campaign, or rather his non-campaign. He still hasn't declared.
It's pretty extraordinary. I mean, the election is next March, April, and still Nicolas Sarkozy is not the official candidate for the UMP party for his own re-election. Now, there's just 2 articles I want to show you today, Lana, and this is something anyone in France who reads the papers would be kind of familiar with, this sort of double game that goes on. Here we have Nicolas Sarkozy affiche sa confiance, speaks about his confidence. Tout se passe comme je l'avais prévu. And they take a quote.
Everything is going as I had
Exactly. This
planned.
was a quote behind closed doors. And you read a lot of this in the French media, meetings that he had with various MPs or ministers, where he speaks openly about his plans to go forward next year for re-election, and even says that he's very confident, but nothing official. But this always leaks out. You always have articles in the first couple of pages of Le Monde or on the website. And for example, what leaked out in the last couple of days, he said, we're entering into a new period in the campaign. We'll have to battle on, and we can win. And he spoke to a number of young MPs who support him, saying, if you want to, get involved in this combat, this is a way of, securing your own future. So we're hearing very clear signs from those meetings that he intends to go forward. And then another article in the same section of the Le Monde newspaper. Here you have Jean-François Copé, the head of the UMP party, who has now asked UMP party supporters to write to Nicolas Sarkozy to encourage him to present himself or to go for the re-election next year.
Is he waiting for people to ask him to come forward? Is that what's going on?
Let's take a look at the actual letter. It's really ridiculous. For the attention of Mr. Nicolas Sarkozy, dear Nicolas Sarkozy, I ask you, I would like to, j'appelle de tous mes voeux. I
call with all my heart.
With all my heart, right? That you go for re-election next year, etc., etc. So I think it's pretty bizarre to see this game going on where they're still pretending that it might not happen. Of course, it's going to happen.
We're just waiting for the right moment, exactly. I suppose, or that rather they are.
Exactly.
Next to a bit of an embarrassing TV moment for a presenter in Quebec who got Kim Jong-il's name wrong.
That's right. Now, I
we shouldn't make fun.
This is true. It could happen to anybody. And maybe I'm opening myself up here to pot calling kettle black. I don't know. But let's just roll these images because they've gone viral in France, actually, in the last number of days. It's a poor misfortunate Quebecer presenter who said Kim Jong-2 because Il looks a little bit like two. But you know what? We can reassure her she is not alone. Rick Perry, presidential candidate in the US. Another ups moment, if we have a look online here, another ups moment is Perry comments on North Korea's Kim Jong II and indeed George Bush II.
Right,
and
so
he was George Bush II.
Company.
He did it too when he was a candidate. So yeah, it's happened quite a few times.
All right. Well, thanks very much for that,
Thanks,
James Creedon. That was Media Watch France on France 24. Stay tuned. Up next is Web News, and we take a look at those stateless residents in Kuwait. They're called the Bidoun, protesting once again.